Hey there, lovely. If you're a driven and highly ambitious woman who has checked all the boxes, followed all the rules, only to realize you don't actually feel fulfilled or you don't feel like you're living your purpose, then you are absolutely in the right place. My name is Melissa Chavis. I'm an intuitive mindset coach, and I am absolutely obsessed with helping you discover your true purpose, that thing you were put here on this earth to do, so that you can live the most fulfilling and abundant life possible. Hey there, lovely. Welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Awakening podcast. This week, we are doing episode 2 of my series, Everything I've Learned About Human Design So Far. Last week, I talked about the 5 different energy types within human design. So if you have not watched that episode, I highly suggest you go back and watch that, because the things we'll be talking about in today's episode are very closely related to those energy types that I went through last week, which are the generator, manifesting generator, manifestor, projector, and the reflector. So as I go through what I'm discussing here today, you'll see how this topic closely relates to last week's topic. So it makes more sense if you kind of have both things together. Today, I am going to dive into the various strategies of each design type. So what is a strategy in human design? It's essentially the best way for you to make aligned decisions or to follow an aligned path in your life. It's the best way for you to make things happen, essentially, as you go through life. If you are truly wanting to live the best life that you possibly can and the most aligned and fulfilling and joyful life for yourself. This strategy essentially applies to both the big decisions in your life and the small day-to-day decisions that you're making. That's why it's incredibly important to just pay attention to your strategy, to kind of hone in on your ability to make decisions and make moves from that place, because truly over time, you'll see how good it can really get if you are continuously following that strategy throughout your life. So the first strategy that we'll talk about today is this strategy to inform. This is the strategy for manifestors. So manifestors, if you remember from last week's conversation, are generally inclined to kind of just make their own decisions and go their own way, forge their own path without a whole lot of input from anyone else. And so it's very easy for them to just make a decision or choose a path and take action immediately without really bringing it up with anybody else or talking to anyone about their decision, because they just know, I'm not really looking for input. This is the decision I've made and this is the direction I'm going. So might as well just do it. However, in order to live in full alignment and create this magnetism that is possible for manifestors, they actually need to be informing others of what they're doing. So this informing is truly, though, coming from a place of simply just telling people, telling someone about your decision, telling someone about this new direction, versus actually looking for input or feedback. So informing is not trying to have a conversation with somebody to see what they think you should do or how they think that you should proceed in any given situation. It is truly just informing, telling them what's happening, what decision you're making, what direction you're going, whatever the case may be. But it truly is the key to this magical alignment that is possible for you. And while this may seem super simple for many of us, it is actually incredibly challenging for manifestors to follow this strategy because it is not easy for them to tell other people what's going on, to tell other people about their decision. It just doesn't come naturally for most of them. And so this alignment with strategy for manifestors can be incredibly challenging because they're essentially having to remember and force themselves to inform others along their journey. So this is one where it is, I think, probably the most challenging for manifestors to actually follow their strategy versus the other energy types and following their strategies. This one is typically very challenging for manifestors. The next strategy is to respond. And this is the strategy for both generators and manifesting generators. It is essentially responding to cues in the environment, in the world around you. And so the great thing for these energy types is that you will literally feel the right answer for you in your body when you are responding to something external. So you will know if something is presented to you, you'll know whether it is a yes or no by how you're actually feeling. It will be a bodily response for you. You'll feel it. You'll just know whether this is right or wrong. Now, we will get into authority next week, but your authority will kind of guide you as to whether or not that gut feeling happens immediately or if it kind of takes a little bit of time for you to make a decision. But for now, what we know is that in order for generators or manifesting generators to follow their strategy, they need to be responding to stimuli in the environment around them. And they will know internally in their body whether or not this opportunity, option, choice is the right one for them or not. So one of the things that you might have noticed if this is your strategy is that making a decision is a lot easier for you if you're actually presented with options, right? So especially if those options are like a yes, no, maybe kind of choice. For instance, if someone says, "Where do you want to go to dinner tonight?" It might be incredibly challenging for you to come up with an answer to that. You just really, you don't have anything to respond to. Versus if someone says, "Hey, do you want to go to that Italian place on the corner for dinner tonight?" They're presenting you with an option that you're able to easily respond to. And typically what's going to happen is they're going to give you this option and you will relatively easily be able to know whether it's a yes, no, or maybe, just because you will know. You will feel it in your body whether or not you want to do that thing or whether or not it is the right thing for you to be doing. Another thing about this strategy of responding is that you don't necessarily need to go out and try to figure out what direction you want to go in life or just come up with an idea of what it is that you want to be doing or where you want to be going. The universe will present you with options so that you can respond to them. Or you can put yourself in different situations where you're able to experience different options, different possibilities for yourself. And then you will know, you'll be able to respond to those situations, to respond to that input, and just know, yes or no, whether that is something that is right for you or not. And that is essentially how you can make those decisions on that kind of grand scale that are guiding your life, is being available and being open to various opportunities and various options so that you can actually respond to those things in the environment around you. Okay. The third strategy is waiting for the invitation. This is the strategy for projectors. So as a projector, you are here to essentially guide others or show them a better way to do something. However, it is incredibly important to wait for the invitation to provide this guidance, to provide your advice, because it could be the most amazing idea in the world, the greatest advice that anyone could possibly receive. But if that other individual isn't open to it and they have not invited you to give that advice, it will completely land on deaf ears. They will not hear it. It will likely kind of be taken as you overstepping or crossing a boundary that really they didn't want you to cross. So, in order for you to truly live in alignment and provide this guidance, it's incredibly important to wait for that invitation and only provide that guidance, only provide that advice to those who are open to hearing it. This strategy, though, is very nuanced because it won't always look like someone specifically asking for your advice or specifically asking you a question or asking you for help on something. It's so important as a projector to remain open and kind of feel out the situation and feel out the other person to see if they seem to be open to that, to see if they're kind of waiting for you to give them that advice in the situation, because that essentially is an invitation as well. It's kind of this idea that they just need to be open to it. They need to recognize that you have this authority and that you have this information that you're willing to provide for them, and that they are open to receiving that guidance and that advice from you. But basically, as a projector, it is your job to recognize and acknowledge your own gifts. Allow the world to see that you are here to provide those gifts and that knowledge and that guidance that you're able to provide. And then wait for those people who are open to it to kind of show up and show you in some way that they are open to receiving that guidance from you. Okay, so the final strategy that we're going to talk about today is the strategy for reflectors. And if you remember from last week's conversation, reflectors are only about 1% of the population, so incredibly rare, which means that this strategy is also only going to apply to that 1% of the population. So very, very few people fall under this strategy. But essentially, the strategy is being carried. And this truly means that as long as you, as a reflector, remain open to the nudges that the universe is going to provide you, then you will essentially be carried along the path that is most aligned for you. Now, this is somewhat nuanced here because as a reflector, you're not meant to act immediately upon anything. You're meant to take time to go through a cycle and see how that direction or that thing feels for you over a period of time before coming to a decision and taking action. So what generally will happen for a reflector, if they are truly following their strategy, they're remaining open, and they're waiting to really make any decision or take any drastic action, they will essentially continuously get nudges over and over again to move them in the right direction, thus carrying them in the right direction in life. And so it's very, very important for reflectors to remain open to those nudges and to recognize them, see them, pay attention, especially if something is coming up over and over again in your life and kind of pushing you in a certain direction, then that's probably the right direction for you. The only caveat to this is because reflectors are so open and they have such open energy, they can sometimes pick up on other people's nudges from the universe, which is why that whole waiting and kind of like taking a beat before you really take any action or move in any certain direction is so, so important. Because if it is a nudge for somebody else, it's not going to keep happening. You're not going to see that repeating happening that you will for the nudges that are truly meant for you in your life. All right, so those are the 4 different strategies within human design and how they correlate to each of the 5 different design types. Of course, if you would like to learn more, reach out. I absolutely love having conversations about this topic. My Instagram account is always linked in the show notes of this podcast, so you can go ahead and DM me there if you want to chat more about this. And I think next week I will be back to talk about that authority piece that I kind of brought up a little bit in this episode and go into a little bit more detail on that one and how that sort of applies and works together with your design type and your strategy. Authority is kind of like the next biggest piece of human design that is important for coming into alignment. Until next time, my love, have a great rest of your day. That's it for another episode of the Authentic Awakening podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you found it helpful, I'd love to hear from you. You can do that by liking and subscribing to my YouTube channel or rating and reviewing the podcast wherever you're listening.